Okay, what you just watched was from me in my future, because I don't have this thing built yet. I don't even know if it's gonna work, so this video may not even come to be. I'm gonna start with this sharpening stone right here. And this is an old one. I dropped it on the floor and broke it in half, and then I glued it back together, but it's still not very good because there's pieces missing out of it, so it doesn't grind very well. So I'm gonna give it up for this project right here. Now the first thing that I need to do is trim this stone down to length, and I cut it around 2.5 inches long. And more or less what I'm doing here is just running a test to see if I can actually cut this with this blade. This is a diamond blade that I've got put in my table saw. And to try to collect as much dust as I possibly can, I've got a vacuum hooked up with the nozzle stuck in as close to the blade as I can get it. All right, that was a remarkably clean cut. Now the way this works is I need 2 pieces of stone, and the face of each piece has to be cut to interlock with each other. And those slots have to be cut pretty precisely. So I've lowered the blade down to cut halfway through the stone, and I've set my fence 1/8 of an inch from the blade. I'm gonna make that first cut. I figure the best way to do this is make all of the one side cuts first. Then after those are done, I can make the adjustments to the fence to open up those slots to fit the other side in. I think the spacing is correct. So the next thing I'm going to do now is cut it to the 1 inch length. The only thing is I'm a little bit anxious about breaking these teeth off, so I've got them taped across the top to try to help keep that from happening. Tape doesn't really stick that well to this stuff because it's so oily, but that oil actually helped while cutting it because absolutely no dust got in the air, so there was really no need for the vacuum cleaner. Now is the moment of truth to see if they actually fit together, and it's a little bit sticky, but I think it's going to loosen up. I figure if I clean them with some solvent like paint thinner and then scrub them back and forth, that'll loosen them up enough so that they'll work together properly. Now obviously these things are really delicate. However, if I were to drop one and break some of the teeth off, I'm calling them teeth because I don't have another name for them, but they do look like teeth in a comb. I could always glue them back on as long as they're not, little fragments. It's actually a couple days later after I finished cleaning the blocks with the paint thinner, I cut a block of hardwood, maple actually, to make the backer blocks that these stone pieces will be glued onto. So I'm cutting it just a little bit wider than the stone pieces are, and then I'm cutting it down to 7/8 of an inch thick before I bring it over to the miter saw and cut it off at 10 degrees for each piece. And then after I got those cut, I could glue on the pieces of stone using epoxy. And I just put some tape on here to hold them in place until the epoxy set up. And what that does is it leaves me with these 2 pieces right here. And I've got them set on this piece of wood here to keep them going straight. But you can see what happens. They'll mesh together like this. And the resulting angle between the 2 faces on the inside is 20 degrees. So that's pretty good for sharpening a knife. So now with that out of the way, the only thing I have left to do is to make the holder that these stones go into. I'm going to start with the bottom first, and then I'm going to cut out the sides. And I'm making this a little bit longer than it should be because I need to spring load these blocks. And what I'm going to be doing that with is foam rubber. And I really have to experiment to find out how much is needed to actually make the blocks move back and forth smoothly with enough resistance. Before I can attach the sides, I have to cut them in half at that same 10-degree angle that matches the stones. And what that does is it creates a slot for the knife to fit in. And to attach the sides, I'm going to be using glue, and I'm going to fire in a couple pins. I'm going to keep them very close to the end though, because I know I need to cut this shorter, and I definitely don't want to cut through one of those pins. I let the glue dry on the case, I guess you could call it, and I brought out a sponge. This is just an ordinary sponge I bought for cleaning tile grout actually. So nothing unusual about it. So I have to do something here to build in a stop so that it doesn't close all the way. I actually made a mistake when I cut out these stones. They were supposed to be 1 1/4 inches tall, and that left me that would leave me enough at the top to start the knife in. Right now they're 1 inch tall, and the idea is that they would touch together at the bottom so that they would act as a natural stop and still be slightly open at the top. But I'll have to think of something to get around that. I fixed the problem of it closing up too much by adding little thin pieces of wood that I just cut and glued in there. And since the wood on each block sticks out a little bit further on each side, it'll go up tight against that. And that seems to be working well. I've also been playing around with how much force it takes to spread the stones apart. I've actually got the foam cut down in size and packed in there a little bit. These stones don't have to move very far at all for the knife to reach from top to bottom. All right, so that looks and it feels pretty good. I think I have enough resistance now on both sides to make the sharpening action really efficient. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue and pin nail in the ends, and then to finish this off, the top panels are removable. So I'm going to fasten those on there with screws only, no glue. That way I can take it apart if I need to, especially if it jams up or something like that. Okay, with both covers on, it still works fine. So there's lots of space in there for this to move back and forth without jamming up. The next thing I need to do is to give it a little bit of a sanding to clean it up. And then I'm going to bring it inside and give it a couple of coats of water-based polyurethane to finish it before I bring it back out again tomorrow and record that segment that you saw at the beginning of the video.